How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to our Cisco Enterprise series. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at our next BGP path selection option, which is local preference, which is probably going to be the most common one that you guys are going to be working with when it comes to dealing with BGP path selection when it comes to basically any size environment. So the basics to this are a higher value is preferred. A 100 is the default on Cisco equipment. It is not advertised to eBGP peers, so it is local to the autonomous system. And it is carried through Confederation eBGP. So if you do this in a Confederation and you have Confederation eBGP peerings like we do, it will be carried between Confederations. Again, it's local to the AS itself. And a Confederation is just a cluster or a group of sub-autonomous systems. So local preference is a global AS stretch, not a Confederation-specific AS stretch. So what we're going to be doing in this particular example here, if we were to look at PC68 and go up here, one of the things that we're doing from a forwarding perspective when we do our trace route, currently we're taking the path through router 26, then we hit 42, then we hit 62, then we hit the internet server. Well, what I'm going to go do is, using local preference, I'm going to change to this path here. So I'm going to set on this peering here a local preference, and you set it on the eBGP peering here. So you go to this neighbor 13, 60, 62, 62, and you do a route map, and then you set the local preference inbound. So any routes that come from 62 to 60 will be set with the local preference of 200 on this device, and that'll get propagated to 26, 27, and 42. Now, you'll still receive those routes from 62 to 42. Now, once we make this change, the best path will then be towards router 60. So this is one of those situations where having software configuration inbound would be a good idea. Now, I'm not going to demo that just so you guys can see it, but it's one of those things where if you have the opportunity to use it, this would be a good time to do so. But we're going to verify this before we actually do anything. So if we look at router 26, and we do a show BGP IPv4 unicast, and we look at where quad 8 is pointing us. Right now, quad 8 is pointing us to 42. Now, if we look at this more in depth, the reason why it's choosing to go via 42 is because if we look at it, now going back to our, I think I've still pulled back up. No, I don't at the moment. So if we look at these outputs, let's examine this route. So the metric in this particular case, if you were to look at best path, is telling us it's going to be this path. Now, if you look at both paths, right, that doesn't really help us out too much. But if we look at it from this perspective, if we go back to, let me pull up this guy, let's go do a quick Google search and do the BGP best path selection, and we look at this again, and we scroll down, we are looking at it from the perspective of, one of the things we got to take into consideration is the metric. Now if we scroll down to the bottom here, it says, I'm looking for, is there anything specific to the metric? And it doesn't look like there is. So both paths have the same, have an IGP metric to the next hop of 2645. So if we look at this, let me hit the up arrow a couple times. So this is the IGP metric. So based off looking at this, the IGP metric, and if we look back at the best path selection algorithm, we scroll up here, actually let's scroll to the bottom. There's a concatenated version of this. Remember, we have to look at this in a couple different contexts. So our tiebreaker in this particular example, we come down here, is the IGP metric to the BGP next hop must be equal to the best path IGP metric. So that's for eBGP multipath. If you don't have eBGP multipath, then in this particular case here, we're looking at the IGP metric to the BGP next hop. If we look at the BGP next hop, what are we seeing? We have 60 as our next hop and 42 as our next hop. In this particular case here, metric of 3 is worse than a metric of 2. So that tells us what? That this particular path is better. Now, if we were to go further down the list, let's scroll back up to the top here. We are looking for prefer the path of lowest IGP metric to the BGP next hop. Now, if these were the same, and we can manipulate that to be the same, prefer the route with that comes from the BGP with the lowest router ID. So what we're going to go do now, I don't want to get into I don't want to jump so far ahead, but this would be a great example of how you can manipulate the metric and then change the router ID, and you can change which direction you go. Where we know for a fact that it's going this way because it says it's the best, but we know based off the IGP metric, because up to that point, the origin is IGP. So starting from the very top, the next hop is accessible, right? The weight is the same. If we were to go back up to here, and we look at quad 8 right here, the weight is the same. It's 0, right? So the next one we would look at is, we see that the origin is the same, the metric is the same, the local preference is the same. They're both internal routes. The AS path is the same. So when you get down the list of these things, so we started at the top, right? We know the local preference is the same, AS path is the same origin type, and they're both internal paths. So we get down to here, this is the tiebreaker. Lowest IGP metric to the BGP next hop. Because hopefully everybody's tracking with what I'm seeing here. So that is why 42 is that. Now what we can do from 26's perspective is I'm going to say from 62, any routes that come from 62 learned by 60 will be the preferred path based off of local preference. So what we're doing is we're putting in a BGP path attribute that is going to say, I want to move, not to look at IGP metric, I want to look at local preference, which is checked before IGP metric, and that's what we're going to go do. So on 60, and I'm going to do a do show run section BGP. I'm going to create a route map BGP local pref permit 10, and I'm going to type in set the local preference to be 200. Exit out, and then I'm going to go to router BGP 1 and then to 1362 right there. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to type in route map BGP local preference and then inbound. Now if we go to the beginning here and do show IP BGP, we're going to see that right now we're learning quad 8 from a couple different paths. We're preferring 6062, right, from us, and the local preference right here is 100. So what's going to end up happening is with our configuration is anything that comes from 13, 60, 62, 62, anything that comes from this next hop, every one of those learned routes are then going to have a local preference of 200 as soon as we apply this configuration, and everything is going to go via router 60. So I'm going to hit the up arrow a couple times, type that command in, do show IP BGP, and then again we have to do a do clear IP BGP star soft, and then we can see that that is now taking the having the desired effect, right? And if I go back to 42, or sorry, 26, hit the 26, do this again, now it's going to choose the 60 path. So because 42 is no longer a best path, because we changed the way the BGP sees it. Now if I do this here, I do a trace route to quad 8, numeric display, we're going to take an additional path. we're going to take the same path before. We're going to hit 26, but now what we're saying with 26, we're saying I want to go through and we're going to go to 27, then we're going to go to 60, then we're going to go to 62, then we're going to go to quad 8. And that is because I modified the local preference for any routes that are coming from 62 into 60. I'm going to change 60 to be my egress point. And that's essentially what you end up having to do. So pretty straightforward design if you think about it. So that's essentially what it is that I wanted you guys to see. So with that being said, that's a basic example of how that would come into play. Now we could do just like we did with the weight option too. We can go in and we can be specific to a prefix list. We can be specific to a AS path. So that's what we're going to go do now. We're going to do this a little further demo. So I want to be specific to a prefix. So we're going to be specific to quad 8. So what I'm going to do is on router 26 is I'm going to create a prefix list, IP prefix list, PL Google permit 8.8.8.8/32, and then do show run pipe section route dash map. Actually, take that back. On 60, my mistake. Let me go ahead and I will take this over to 60. Exit out a couple times, and then we're going to go ahead and paste this in, and then do show run pipe section route dash map, and then we're going to say match IP address and prefix list PL Google. Now when I do show IP prefix dash list detail, I have to first do clear IP BGP star soft. I have to trigger a route refresh. So I should see a hit on that. And if I do show IP BGP, yeah, that should, so it's still triggering for everything. There it goes. It took a little longer than I expected. So now the only route that's getting affected is quad 8. Okay. Now if I go back to here, I do a trace route again. Right, I take that path through 62, but this time I do a trace route to 3.1.44.1. I should take the more direct path, going out 33 to 62, directly to hitting 44, and then hitting the internet server. So that's based off the prefix. Now, the reality of it is, this is probably as far as you would ever take it. You would match on a prefix, and then you would set the local preference for that prefix, and then you would send it to where you want to go. That is a very common design that I've seen used a lot of times. It's probably as close as you want to get. Now, if you wanted to use the AS path, you could do the same thing. If you want to say match on a particular AS path and have that traffic go this way, we can do the exact same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to R33 because he's already got that in play. I'm going to do a show run section AS path. I'm going to steal this access list because it's already pre-built and we know it works. I'm going to jump over to router 60 and I'm going to match on this. Then do show run pipe section BGP, or I'm sorry, route dash map. And I'm going to go underneath this route map. I'm going to say match IP or match AS path 1. And because we're matching on Google, right? If I was to say no match IP address prefix list Google, right, and then do clear IP BGP star soft and do show IP BGP, we're going to see, I'll have to give that a second here to do its thing. Do show IP do show run section route dash map. Yeah, so we should see a couple of prefixes coming from do show IP BGP. There it goes. Like I said, it took a couple seconds for it to trigger, but we see the routes coming from 101 are setting a local preference of 200 based off the AS path. Now, if I was to jump back in here and pull this back in and do it the right way being, if I want to match on a specific prefix, this is how I would do that. I would, I'd come in here, I would do the match IP address prefixes Google on the specific route, and then do this, and then do clear IPBGP star soft, and then that should fix that. So there you go. So based off just that information alone right there, we can tell that we're going to be at 62 in the direction we want to go. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you would do best path selection with local preference in terms of how that's coming into play. Now what I'm going to go do is I'm going to remove this on 60 so that when we go to do AS path prepending, that will be able to be demonstrated as well. So do show run section BGP, and I'm just going to grab all of this and know it out. And yes, you can copy the config in over and over and over again, and it has no effect on the rest of it because it's already in place configuration. It's if you started knowing commands out, that would be problematic. So this is just one of those things where you want to keep that in the back of your mind, where you can copy and paste the config in if you'd like. So that is essentially, and we're going to do a quick do show IPBGP, and I have to do clear IPBGP star soft. Now, if you weren't impatient like I am, and I'm in the middle of doing demonstrations on how you would manipulate this, you could let this sit for a few minutes, and eventually the BGP scanner is going to kick in, and it's going to detect the change. But I'm trying to speed the process up, and we can see now we're back to a stable environment. And if I go back over here to 26 and type in do show IPBGP, we're going to know that quad 8 is going to go be a 42 again. And we've returned ourselves to a known good configuration. So trace route, quad 8. Just like that. Now we're still going to 26, but this time we're going to out 42 to 62. We're not going through 60 anymore. So we've cut one less AS hop down. So instead of being 27 to 60 to 62, we're going directly 26 to 42 to 62. So the path that we want to take has been unaffected now based off of local preference. But that's how you would do that. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, drop that in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.